What's happening, guys? Mohammed Tantawi here, back, except now we're doing a reaction video. So I did a great reaction video on Umar Johnson about a year ago that did really well. It was actually my best video I've ever made. So we are going to follow that up with a year after encore. So let's get started.
So we're gonna get right into it. What is this big obsession with like this big push of Trump support from black people? What's going on here, Faye?
Couple things. I think the reason why Donald Trump is getting more support from black people, and I would not be surprised if this would be the first election since the 1930s that black people voted more for a Republican than a Democrat.
Already absolutely wrong. 21% of black males voted for Trump, 7% of black females. So you wouldn't be surprised is just a really big exaggeration.
So history might be made in November. History might be made. But don't get it twisted. The black bourgeoisie is on their job and they out there. You see Kamala Harris running around with Fat Joe, I think it was, and some other rappers. They trying to get the rappers to carry the vote for Trump now. So the black bourgeoisie ain't gonna go easy because they know if Trump wins, they're done. No more contracts, no more set aside. You see what I'm saying? Because remember, the black bourgeoisie is only fighting for their own personal stake. They don't care about black folks and the Democrats. If you can't deliver the black vote, what good?
I don't know what the hell he's talking about. There is a black bourgeoisie maybe in Atlanta and sections around the country that have like a wealthy black community, or at least small community. But as far as these ambiguous contracts, I don't know what he's talking about.
Good of you. So they all going if they lose. They're not fighting for us, they fighting for themselves. Couple reasons why black folks may go Republican in November. Black people may go Republican in November. Number one, I think they're finally getting disenchanted with the Democrats. I think it's finally beginning to seep in. I think a lot of the analyses that are being made by black political thinkers, including myself, I think black people are really starting to see that we've been had. I mean, to have voted this way for 90 years and got nothing out of it, it's time for a change of some sort. That's number one. Number two, I think a lot of black people are attracted to Donald Trump's unapologetic disposition. He's very unapologetic. He don't go off cue cards. Completely different from Barack Obama and Joe Biden. You follow me? For a lot of black people, even though he's a racist, he's a breath of fresh air because he says what he wants to say. The entertainment aspect of Donald Trump is winning blacks. Number three, Donald Trump claims to care about the economic state of black America, which he doesn't, but he's openly saying, I'm going to do something about the economics in the black community. He said that the first term, it ain't do nothing, right? So he's not going to do nothing, but he's speaking directly to black America where Joe Biden is not. And I think that's why he's going to carry a lot of votes, especially black men. Especially black men, because what is the black man's biggest issue? Earning money. Biden ain't even talking about it. So I do think that Donald Trump, for the first time in almost 100 years, he may carry the black vote. Now,
there were a lot of good points there. I mean, I'll give him that. He started off the interview terribly to me, but that was good.
I'm still not voting for neither one of them. And the reason why is they're both racist. Neither one has a track record of helping black folks. Joe Biden got this migrant crisis coming in where he's basically trying to wash out the black with the brown, and they are making headway. To see him take care of people who are not even citizens, while we got homeless blacks, disabled blacks out there, veterans who not get what they're supposed to, I can't support that crap. To watch him take care of the Native Americans and the homosexuals and the Asian hate bill and all this, and billions to Ukraine and billions to Israel, and not do nothing for me, he can't get my vote. But when I look at Trump, I look at the fact that he signed more death warrants, federal death warrants, his last term than any president since slavery. And when I look at the fact that he wants to give the police complete immunity, they're killing us now. Once they get complete immunity, you can't even question what they did. You know how many black folks are going to die on these streets? So for me, I have very strong, compelling reasons to not vote for either, and I don't have a good reason to vote for either. So neither one of them get my vote. I'll probably vote for one of my ancestors or something.
The thing I don't understand with the politics, man, is like, we understand the game, right? But the promises they make, you don't have to have the greatest intellectual capability to understand they can't deliver.
Or will not deliver.
Will not deliver. Yes, right? So that's the whole point I don't understand with this commitment, because
I do want to say that there's a lot more than racial promises or promises to a specific group that don't get done than just to a specific group. So politicians make a variety of promises and sometimes don't deliver. Most times don't deliver. Obama's big deliverance was the Obamacare Act. So I wouldn't just nail that to race specifically, but in the context of what Dr. Umar talks about mostly, I get it.
I don't understand how people argue, specifically black people. I don't know how they understand. I don't understand how they argue about politics in this modern day of time, as if like this person's actually going to help you and this other person's actually going to help you. And like, if we observe what's going on, even what you said with immigration, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to be Dr. Doom, but if I look kind of rough for black people moving forward, how the system's set, and I don't see these people doing anything to assist. So we may want to come up with another plan outside of walking behind these people and looking for them to do something.
Absolutely. And here's the other thing: the immigrants are here for three main reasons. Number one, to replace us at the polls, even though they're not citizens in many jurisdictions due to election fraud. If you have a work permit, you can damn sure get a voting permit. You follow me? So one of the reasons Joe Biden brought them in here is to aid them at the polls. So they're here to replace us at the polls. They're here to
That's not true. That's not true. The voting statistics on Latino males, I think, proves that about 56% voted for Trump. I don't think Biden lets immigrants in to get votes. That's not. For anything, the Latino community is very religious, which goes against a lot of the leftist gender theories and things like that. So that point just went down the toilet for me.
place us in the labor market. They're going to take all of the low industry jobs. Your Walmart, your McDonald's, your grass cutters, your floor sweepers. They're going to take all that, so it won't be none left for blacks.
They started taking them already.
Yeah, yeah. And the third reason, and I hate to say it because I don't want to see this, but this is America. I believe that at some point in the future, I don't know how soon, I don't know how distant, America is going to instigate a racial clash between brown people and black people. If you look at Chicago, the brothers and sisters are already talking about it in Chicago. They say the way where they put these migrants at in our community, they were telling me how.
I disagreed with the second point about taking the jobs. And the third point is just absolutely ridiculous. I need him to understand that my struggle as a brown person isn't the black struggle. But at the same time, I am closer to that struggle than I am to white privilege or to white existence, to whiteness. So I really am confused on this barricading of color that he's doing. It's this is Hotep. This is Hotep.
Some of the Latino gangs are recruiting them, arming them. They're hurting black people. They beat up one black girl really bad, messed the whole eye up. Nobody went to prison. They said if you look at the writing on the wall, they are arming themselves to one day rise up against us. There was something, this white woman did a report on YouTube where she said a whole bus full of migrants came to Chicago and somebody from the army brought bags full of weapons on there. She said she saw herself. If this doesn't go as quickly as they want it to go in terms of us being replaced by them, they're going to instigate a racial class that will lead to a mass loss of life for black folks because the government is going to stand with them against us. We're going to be seen as the perpetrators. So black people need to get armed. We need to get ready. But we also need to admit that part of this is our fault, though, because we have pushed this multiculturalism. We have preached this black and brown thing so long that, well, since they're always talking about black and brown, send the brown people in there. And that's exactly what they did because we don't believe in having communities of our own. But with that being said, the biggest reason.
I've heard this talking point before, and I agreed with it in the first video I made on this. But when you say that we're uncomfortable or we're just not making our own communities, What exactly does that look like? Because the money in this country is held by the white folk, the real investment money to secure venture capitalist funds, acquisition funds, just the ability to do something large, like open up a hospital, is like something he talks about a lot. You have to be able to cooperate with people of different races. We live in a melting pot society, and he seems like he's stuck in this Marcus Garvey-ish mindset that he parades this necessity for change but allows no room for it to actually change because it's non-malleable. It doesn't work. So I'm kind of stunned that he's still sticking with this argument.
Why black people don't get anything for our vote and never will is our vote is disorganized. In order to hold you the new mayor of Camden, hypothetically, he's the new governor of New Jersey, hypothetically. I can't hold either one of you accountable if we did not vote as a group. I have to be able to tell you that 45% of the black vote went to you, and we did this together. So if you don't open up them swimming pools, if you don't come up with some jobs, your next election, you're gone. Whether we give that 45% vote to another Democrat, another independent, or the Republican, you will not be in office the next time around. But when you vote as individuals, there's no organizational structure to your vote.
Okay, so I've had this conversation with people before. Black people are individuals. And I love that we like to group up. And he's made this argument before that Asians group together, Israelis group together, Muslims group together, Arabs, all this. None of those groups are as fundamental to the history of America as black people are. And in order to escape the tragedies of yesterday, they've individualized themselves to become part of society, to become human beings. Because in order for people to see you not just firsthand on your race, you have to have some individualism to you. You have to have personality. So I think black people, in a way, it's a survival skill to become something of your own merit and to develop a creative personality and a unique persona that you develop different opinions. You have different thoughts, and everyone has different opinions and thoughts as we go on. And I can't see a world where I just grouped up all the Arabs together and just said, okay, we're going to do this. Like, for example, in Dearborn and Dearborn Heights in Michigan, the 2024 election, 56% of the residents in Dearborn are Arab. And I think 44% are in Dearborn Heights are Arab. Trump won the majority of those votes in those cities. We're talking about the most densely populated Arab Muslim cities in the U.S. Trump won those votes. Nationally, Kamala won those votes. Kamala. So I just don't see a thing where just because your identity or because your color that you group up your vote. It's not plausible. It's not malleable.
You can't make them kind of threats because you voted by yourself. And you alone can't unseat me. You alone can't unseat me. You alone can't unseat me. Don't you find it interesting that people only tell black people to vote? They never tell them to organize it. Jews organize their vote. Those immigrants who are voting, it's going to be organized. The Arabs, they organize. I'm not saying they all vote for the same candidate.
The Arabs were not organized, as I just explained. This is just a false claim. The Israelis are not organized. He's talking about AIPAC, or a list of like Jewish election donors. No, or lobbying. I mean, no. This hurts my brain to hear.
But they vote in blocks that are large enough where the person running for office better heed whatever it is they need to get done, because if you lose that block of votes, you might not carry that election. We don't do that. We ain't got no black voting blocks. Show me somebody that got a black voting block. We are completely dependent on the Democratic Party plantation to carry out anything black people need done. We don't vote as independent voters. We don't think as independent voters. It's all Democrat until it's not.
Hey, have you heard about this thing called decentering men movement?
I haven't. Decentering men. What's that?
All right, so it's a movement. It's been going on. Women choose to focus on themselves and reject the standards of men in their decision making. Right?
These are heterosexual women or
Heterosexual.
Okay, heterosexual women are rejecting the standards of men and focusing on themselves. Who is behind this?
I'm not sure. Right?
And the reason I ask is because we know now that the CIA was behind Gloria Steinem in the feminist movement. That the CIA funded early feminism. So I'm wondering if some of this black male-female relationship conflict, I would not be surprised to find out that some of this was financed by the power structure.
And the people I noticed that speak.
I'm going to pause this to actually look up that, because I have heard that multiple times and I'm always skeptical of that every time.
There's a claim that Gloria Steinem was connected to the CIA in her early career, but it's not as direct as saying the CIA funded the feminist movement. Steinem herself has acknowledged working with a CIA-funded group called the Independent Research Service in the 1950s and 1960s, organizing youth festivals to counter Soviet influence during the Cold War.
Basically, it was a propaganda matchup, and the CIA funded different organizations to promote women and promote just cultural phenomenons that were happening in the Western world that were better than the Eastern world. So I don't know what he's talking about.
Speak about relationships, and I don't know if you can attest to this, and you know the relationship status of the people who host the shows you go on. They're single, and they haven't been married. So I don't know why they're the voice of marriage and sustainable relationships when they themselves are not in a relationship or haven't been married. But those seem to be those who are leading the narrative in regards to relationships in the black community. So, as I said, I don't know who's funding them, who's pushing them, but this disdain women are proclaiming for men and this disdain that men are proclaiming for women is both destructive, but at one point I think it's a psychological tactic that they're using to soothe themselves that they're kind of out of the market and they're spreading this narrative.
You know, this might be it. There was, I was watching FD Signifier, and there was a huge conversation boiling online about whether Kamala did not get white men to vote, suburban white men, and a lot of black men swayed towards the Republican side, and that could be, in my estimation, I think it's probably a case of like interracial gender hating. So like a toxicity that breeds against seeing the other gender in a form of leadership. So maybe a lot of men were not ready to see not only a first woman president, but a black woman as president. So I do see like there is some truth in that question.
Great point. I got a couple thoughts. Number one, I think a lot of the people who are engaged on a regular basis in this conflict between the genders come from homes where unsuccessful relationships was modeled by their parents. They came from broken homes. They came from traumatized homes. They came from domestically abusive homes. And I think they carry that pain with them into their adult relationships. And I think that childhood trauma of observing dysfunction was intensified when they actually experienced it themselves in their romantic relationships. I think a lot of them suffer from low self-esteem, where they constantly are ending up with the wrong people because they're too afraid to approach the right people.
Say that again.
A lot of people are constantly ending up in dysfunctional relationships with the wrong people because they don't have the self-esteem to approach the right people. That is a very big issue.
Flat out genius statement.
Issue in the community. I'm going to add to that the mistrust that a lot of us have of the opposite sex because of how poor our relationship was with our opposite sex parent. Very few of these men who are out here condemning women have a great relationship with their mother.
Fact.
And very few of these women who are out here condemning men have great relationships with their fathers. And so what a lot of this is is because I am in pain, I want everyone else to be. And because I have not found functional and productive love, I don't want anyone else to find it either. And what I'm seeing is men and women who are selfishly trying to indoctrinate other people with their dysfunctional views of the opposite sex in hopes that they don't find a good situation. It's all.
The last part was speculation, but the things that he's saying about the mother and the father are very true. These are long-standing psychological breakthroughs that started, with Freud and Fromm, Jung. So, yeah, he is spot on that those relationships do affect you very heavily.
Almost as if I didn't succeed, and I don't want none of you to succeed. And the best way to do that is to convince you there are no good black women. The best way to do that is to convince you that there are no good black men. And that's one of the reasons why we're going to be putting on the Conscious Singles Convention at FDMG. Once we get approved and we're right at the finish line, quick update for the family. We got to have another paint day because we didn't finish. We got about 6 rooms we got to paint. We got 9 rooms we got to put some tile on.
We're going to get on the school.
I got you. And then we'll be ready. But on this love piece, I think that you have traumatic people, traumatized Africans leading the discourse. It's the same thing when we talk about polygyny. When you talk about polygyny, you only hear from successful, single black women who are so astoundingly gorgeous and so economically elite that they are in a position where they may never have to share their husband, right? But you don't represent the norm. But guess what? They will block the door. You will never hear from the mother with 6 kids. You will never hear from the woman on public assistance who's been married twice and neither relationship worked out. You're not going to hear.
You will hear from them. Look, with the advent of social media, you can hear anyone you want. There are couples pages, there are black women pages, there are white men pages, there are conservative pages. That you can find whoever you're looking for. If he's talking about on the mainstream, then he might have a point here. He might have a point in the mainstream.
From the sister who had to go to jail because she had to take out her spouse for, abusing her, and now she's back out here trying to build a family. Women who have less than perfect backgrounds are never involved in the conversation on polygyny. And another piece to what you said earlier when we talk about this black male-female relationship conflict, married couples tend not to enter in the discourse.
Facts, man. Because they don't got time fighting.
Well, some of them, because they completely reject the narrative that they're hearing because it's nonsense and their marriage shows that you can be happy, right? But then a lot of them are not getting involved in the discourse because although they are in a good marriage, they were not great parents. And some of their children are the ones out here leading the charge to destroy the opposite sex. So even though I'm happily married to my wife, I'm not going to get on one of these podcasts and expose how wrong these young people are. And
I hope everyone watching knows that these are very fringe communities and very small. Most people are not opposite gender haters, even if they've been hurt by the other gender or their opposite gender parent. Most people are not actively on social media just finger warriors typing away at, slandering men or slandering women. It's just, most people are not like that.
And say they can't find happy black love because I wasn't there for my daughter. And she may expose me on one of these podcasts one day and say, Daddy, you're the reason I can't find good black love because you never validated me as a woman.
But at what point in an adult's life do we stop using past experience as a cop-out for our future growth?
I don't know if you could call it a cop-out because coming from a psychological perspective, your past is always present. Your past is always present in your current experience. It's always relevant. It's like I stepping out of relationships. To give you a quick analogy, I've done life coaching with seniors, 70 years old, still looking for their mother or father, or still mourning the loss of their mother or father, or still shameful for the fact that before mom or dad left this earth, we was on bad terms. They 70 and 80. You never outrun your past. It's there. The issue, though, is can you make peace with it? You always want to carry it with you. Can you make peace with it?
Maybe I need to reword it in regards to how much control it has over you and how it dictates your life.
That depends on how much trauma you carry.
Yeah.
The more trauma, the more control your past has over you. Take somebody with post-traumatic stress disorder, right? A Vietnam vet, hypothetically. He's never going to stop experiencing those dreams in the middle of the night. And when he's dreaming, he thinks he's back in Vietnam. Vietnam was 50 years ago. But guess what? His past is with him every day. And it's so present that he can't even tell the difference between whether he's in a Vietnam battlefield or in the bed with his wife. I once knew a sister, right? Vietnam vet as a husband. He slept with his knife, his Vietnam knife in the bed because he felt he needed that because when he had those dreams, they were so real. They put him back on the battlefield. And she said, Doc, all I could do was pray and hope to God that one night he don't have one of them dreams and it gets so real that he sees me as a Viet Cong and pick that knife up and not stab me to death.
But it almost,
past is always with us.
And please correct me, but it almost sounds like people don't heal.
No, the past is with you.
Yeah.
Even when you heal, the past is with you. The difference between the healed person and the unhealed person, right, is the healed person made peace with their past. But in order to make peace with your past, you got to confront it. I think the point that you're making, and I agree, we ain't confronting our past. These people on the podcast running around talking about some all black men ain't ish. How can you say that about millions of people? How many relationships have you had? I had 10 relationships.
If that.
If that.
They're like 3.
And you generalize everybody, you know why? Because the first thing I'm going to say in life coaching, because they're not going to admit this on a podcast. They never going to admit this in a podcast. Life coaching, tell me about the relationship with your father. Boom, everything comes out. Everything comes out. Because the relationship you had with your opposite sex parent or surrogate, because it could have been step-parent, could have been aunt, that relationship is predictive of your future romance with anybody else of the opposite sex. I cannot separate my relationship with my mother from the relationship I have with any woman because my mother is my first love affair. Not sexually, psychosocially. If you had a good love affair with your mother, you can go and love a woman. If a woman had a good love affair with her father, she can go and love a man. But if you didn't, you always going to be suspicious. Let me give you this. Half these people talk about they've been done wrong. I bet you if we interviewed a person who they claim who did them wrong, half of them, it was all in their head. It was all in their head. You are literally making assumptions of what this person is or isn't doing based on your past trauma. And that's why you always hear me say, traumatized people should not date because you're nothing more than a spiritual vampire. You're taking all your baggage, putting it in this person's life, and when they grow intolerant of dealing with it, you claim that they did nothing but waste your time. When the truth of the matter is they wanted to give you an honest chance at love, but you couldn't make peace with your past because you was too afraid to confront it.
And you know another part I have with this whole dialogue that's so popular now.
It is no healing.
I wanted to pause it just to say, like, you know, when someone sticks to what they studied and actually did for a living like that, you can sound like a genius. But when you start talking about politics, i.e. Jordan Peterson, when you sway away and become a polymath or a pseudo-polymath, that's when I tend to lose people. But that was so spot on, so accurate, so well spoken. I can't even add anything to it.
Involved in it. I don't see anybody saying, okay, y'all, we know how we feel. Can we start to heal now?
But there's another part, man. They're starting to muddle the reality about marriage. It almost seems this perfectionism now. So the relationship is just not perfect across the board.
It ain't no use getting involved.
Yeah, it needs to be terminated right away. And we're not talking about abuse or craziness. Right? But as you know, in any relationship, there are
ups and downs.
But there's no narrative or there's no dialogue.
They want a guarantee of success before they enter the field. You know what that sounds like? It sounds just like black folks. We want a guarantee of success before we organize and do anything about our situation. Dr. Umar, you got a guarantee.
See, example, literally what I just said. It was fantastic, guarantee success in the marriage, and then moved on to generalizing all black people into wanting success before organizing. It's just stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know how he does it.
See me, when we build this black hospital, it's going to work. It's only going to take this amount of money and this amount of time. And we ain't going to really have no issues on our way to building that hospital or this school or this supermarket. And if there's going to be any issues at all, I don't want to be a part of it. Do you know what they're saying? I have no commitment. That's all that means. I have no commitment to working through a situation that is less than perfect.
Hey, we recently had a conversation with Brother Nuri Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
And we were talking about how we live in a commitmentless society.
We do.
And it's impacting relationships tremendously. The question I have now for people is that, Fire, you need a companion in life. I don't care what nobody say. You know what I'm saying? You need a companion in life.
We made to be together.
You know, I'll say like, I need my wife.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? I need my kid. I need
Yes,
companionship. What they're doing now is they're putting themselves in a position where they don't have companionship, and is leading to more spiritual and mental issues because you're in this isolated space and you don't function well in isolation and confusion.
I agree. You need a balance between the two.
This thing is very detrimental that's going on here, and I don't think people are analyzing the long-term implications.
I see it. I'll give you one implication. I'll give you a long-term implication to this consistent war between the genders in our community. More and more elders, and as we become elders, are going to spend their golden years by themselves. And nothing bothers me more than when I see an elder living alone. Because when they transition, nobody may know for days. You know, I see twin mothers alone. I see the Babas alone. We definitely are not meant to be that way.
This is a problem in all races. Divorce rates, you can just look them up. 1 in 2 divorces, or 1 in 2 marriages end up in divorce. This is a problem among all races. It's not really specific to black people, and it is a sad problem we have. But again, I don't know why he barricades his argument into like black people only when a lot more can get done, you know, with a bigger community around you. I want to revisit his thoughts on like MLK, because MLK was like a socialist and surrounded himself with a few gay people, and you know, I'm just at a loss of like the superiority complex, but for specific types of people. I don't get it.
And I think the reason why it's so easy for us to call it quits on the romance is because our families often do not function as collectives either. If you look at our families, mom might be tight with the daughter, dad might be tight with the son, but dad don't really mess with his daughter, mom don't really mess with her son, mom and dad have their issues. It's almost like everybody's renting space in the home, but we don't function like a family. Remember, if you were not exposed to it, you will not value it. So a lot of these people who are saying, I'm so quick to walk away from a potential love with my opposite sex, I don't need it, I don't care about it, I'm just going to focus on me. There's no value there. And the reason there's no value here because you never experienced that in a healthy fashion as a child. And that's why it's a double-edged sword. Because on the one hand, I don't want unhealthy men and unhealthy women coming together because they're going to make more unhealthy children, which is going to lead to more unhealthy podcasts. On the one hand, I don't want them coming together. On the other hand, if they don't come together, they never work through the conflicts and contradictions to see that love can happen. So it's a double-edged sword because on the one hand, you're a spiritual vampire. Don't nobody really need to be messing with you anyway. But on the other hand, if you give it a chance, you might see that it's possible, and you might be one of the ones that win through.
Obviously, there's an exodus from the black church, right? For the last 2 decades. Do I notice? I want to hear what you have to say this, right? Do I notice now many black people are identifying themselves as Israelites? Have you noticed this?
We've always had a strong Hebrew movement in Black America. Would I say that there's been an influx within the Hebrew movement? I would say yes. especially since the Kyrie Irving debacle with the NBA and the way those Hebrew brothers came out and stood in solidarity for him outside the Barclays Center. Also with the Hebrews to Negroes book that was at the heart of the Kyrie Irving controversy. I think that had a lot to do with the influx towards the Hebrew movement. And of course, you got different sectors of the Hebrew movement, right? You got different ones. I ran into one of the leaders of the Hebrew movement in Chicago last month. I'm forgetting the brother's name, but he invited me to his restaurant, which I'm definitely going to go to, but I haven't made it to yet. I mean, for me, depending on what set we talking about, I'm okay with the Hebrew movement because not all Hebrews reject African ancestry. I know of one group, they specifically would tell you we are African Hebrew Israelites. You know, the way that I see it, under the African umbrella, we have all kind of religions, we have all kind of cultures, we have all kind of ethnicities. So I don't have a problem with the Hebrew Israelites being one of them. The only issue I would have with some of the Hebrew Israelites is when they say we are not from Africa or every African in America is necessarily a Hebrew. I think that's too broad of a generalization. I am not so arrogant as to profess that I don't have any Hebrew blood within me, but I also tend to know my family's ancestry, and I know that we're from Africa, you know, and we don't come from kingdoms that are Hebrew, although I may have an ancestor who may have been, because after all, we got what, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, 32 great-great-great-grandparents, 64 great-great-great-great-grandparents. You know what I mean? So as you go further and further back and your ancestral pool widens, I don't think it's a hop, skip, and a jump for me to sit here and say I'm probably sure that I might got a few Hebrew ancestors in there. But at the end of the day, we are African people. And for me, that's my primary identity. But I ain't got a problem going into a Hebrew temple. I ain't got a problem studying with them. You know, for me, being a Pan-Africanist, you know, our whole agenda is unity of the race. So if I need to spend time with the Hebrews to further that agenda, if I need to spend time with the brothers and sisters in the Nation of Islam, if I need to spend time with the gods and earths, if I need to spend time with the black socialists, aka African internationalists, you know, if I need to spend time with the Nawapians, I can go amongst any religious, cultural, or political movement and be at peace, because at the end of the day, no matter what people believe in or profess, we all came from one source. We all came from one ancestor, and everybody knows where that ancestor was, and that's Africa. And there ain't no way getting around that. So I'm okay with it. My thing is diversity should be appreciated in the black political struggle. And I think too often people are looking for people to be robots. They think everybody should be a cutout of them. I'm not into that. You know, I tell people all the time, I want to make you think. I don't necessarily need you to become a Pan-Africanist. If you think I'm still better off than where I was when I started with you, my thing.
I like where he's going with this. You know, like I'm glad he clarified those points, and to say that some things are an overgeneralization coming from him is hilarious. I don't know why you need to unify the black community when it comes to being more progressive. I feel like things get done when you have more and more people, i.e., like Obama's draw with white women and college educated white people. Like I think you need people to help you along the struggle, especially since I think black people make up like 13% of the population. So again, barricading, I don't know why he's doing that. But at the same time, I like that he is very comfortable with the different cultures that emanate from Africa and are among the black community. That's pretty cool.
Thing is, can we work together? We don't have to agree on everything. We have to agree on certain things. The enemy is when somebody says, unless you pray as I pray, I can't work with you. Unless you become this, unless you believe in this, you going to hell. Or, you know, being African don't matter, you know, or we're the chosen ones and the rest of y'all are not. Anytime that religious narcissism gets in there, now I got to step away, because what you preaching now is going to push us further apart. It's not going to bring us together.
What do you think is the origin of?
Well, no, because when you're religious, the priority changes from yourself to outside to something greater than yourself. So to say that the struggle would be more important than the religion you worship, the nation. I consider the nation like a false sect of Islam. It's fine, but I hope they believe that, you have to submit and say, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, there is only one God, and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the messenger. I would think that they're online with that at least. And, Muslims do believe if you don't, believe that, then you are destined for hell for at least a time. And that to me falls short. Like, you can be involved in the struggle, but the struggle becomes secondary when you are committed to a religion of a greater, higher power. That's how it works.
Of what you refer to as religious narcissism, because I want to say one thing before you start. I am aware that, especially with Christian denominations, the people who are members of it don't know the origins of it, don't know the short term of it. Like, they don't understand, like, this just started the other day.
Yes.
But why do you think people really have this, like, man, like, if you're literally not a part of this, you're going to hell?
I believe one of the reasons is this. We know that the origins of Islam, Christianity, the Hebrew faith, nearly every religion, if it's ancient enough, it came out of African culture. We know that. Muhammad ibn Abdullah was a black man. His mother was a Sudanese Arab. His father was from the tribe of Quraysh. They were one of the blackest tribes in Mecca. Undisputedly, he was African. We know Christ was. Okay?
Wasn't everyone African at one point? I've never heard that before in my life. And I have heard the case that Islam and Christianity and Judaism all came from Africa, stolen from African traditions. I think it was Ben Yusuf. Watched a speech from him from the 80s. But as far as a direct generational, like one generation away from being African, I would have to look into that. And as a Muslim, I'm quite surprised to hear that.
We know Moses was. He was taught in the ways of the Egyptians. Had to be blue, black, purple with a nappy head. The problem is, even though these religions originated in our culture, they were colonized by non-Africans for a period of time and given back to you. One of the things that happened in that colonization period, because these religions were used as instruments of conquest, the aspect of tolerance was done away with because they used them as instruments of social control, right? So when the various emperors took over, if you did not believe in Jesus as the Son of God, you lose your life. When the Arabs took over North Africa, if you don't say Muhammad is the last prophet of God, we taking your head off. So there was no room for these religions to coexist with any other spiritual system. So when the religions came back to us during slavery and post-slavery, we picked up that religious narcissism with it. We picked up that lack of tolerance with it.
I get what he's saying, but you have to understand, like, speaking from an Islamic context, once the Prophet, peace be upon him, dies, these are just humans now running the ummah, or the state of the religion. So you can't hold them to the religious standard. Like, these aren't prophets. They're just followers. That's all they are now. They're just same as, I mean, in the Islamic sense, a few of them were among the elite, but the rest of the people, I mean, are just like Muslims today. So, and in the context of conquering territories, Muslims would yes conquer you, but the actual bad thing would happen is the tax. They would tax you if you didn't believe. If you wanted to live in Muslim territory, you were offered protection, but you had to pay a tax, and that's how it worked. If you didn't want to pay the tax, you had to leave. If you didn't want to leave, you had to fight. So yes, there were times of turmoil, but at the same time, it actually flourished into a multicultural region in a lot of places.
We interpreted the religion from the aspect of imperialism as these non-Africans used it as a weapon of imperialism. That's why you have black people say, if you're not saved, you ain't saved? Boy, you want to go to hell if you ain't saved. I can't be bothered with this. Is this a Christian organization? Right? Same thing in the Muslims, because I was raised Muslim. They just as religious and narcissistic. You know what I mean? Are they Muslim, or is this a Muslim thing? Is this Islam? Because if this ain't dealing with the Quran, I'm not going to be bothered with it. I remember I was at a meeting at the Garvey House in Northfield.
That's the point of religion. It's the belief in the unseen. It's the belief in the scripture. I mean, you can't be religious without believing that your way is the right way and the only way. That's the point. And I get this like spiritualist, humanist type like religion that people can follow if they want to, but to abide by the religion in its strictest sense, in its most purest sense, you have to, at this time, barricade yourself into a lifestyle, into a set of morals, into believing that a set path is not only destined for you, but you have to choose it. And I don't see that as narcissistic. It's choosing what you believe is the best thing for you.
With two Muslim elders who I respect. They're both ancestors now. Both ancestors. They came in there. We had an initiative we was putting together. I think it was to stop the violence, right? These are two well-respected Muslim leaders, American African Muslims. You know what the leader said? He's an ancestor now. Rest in peace. You know what he said? He said, because this is going to be an all-black initiative, I'll never forget this. He said, because this is going to be an all-black initiative, my religion doesn't allow me to be part of anything that will only allow black people to participate. That is the problem with religion. It does not prioritize the needs of African people. Most religionists care more about the success of their church.
I just hope that you could see the flaw in that watching it. The man, the ancestor who made the decision not to be a part of something that only has to do with black people or only black people can join, it's because Islam itself doesn't allow for racism. It doesn't allow for a differentiation. So I am very surprised. Dr. Umar is kind of crazy, bro. I don't know. I might just leave it there because I've kind of had enough. We've been through 30 minutes. He says some good things psychologically, but when it comes to his cultural analysis, it's just so subpar and uneducated and so social media essence, just BS that it looks like he was just on X for a week straight. So I mean, I'm gonna leave it there. This is a terrible interview. But my name is Muhammad Tantawi. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, leave a comment in below. Tell me what you thought of it. Tell me if you thought I was crazy or whatever. Like the video, share it with a friend, and I will see you next time.